He announced divorce at company Gala to humiliate me. Next day I bought the company, now he's begging. Hello family, welcome back. Please do well to subscribe, and let's know where you are watching the story from in the comment section. If Sarah Wellington had known how the night would end, she wouldn't have spent 3 hours curling her hair. She wouldn't have worn the midnight blue gown David had picked out, the one he said made her look like the perfect CEO's wife. And she certainly wouldn't have been smiling at his side as the cameras flashed. But at that moment, walking into the grand ballroom of the Manhattan Regency Hotel, Sarah thought this was just another company gala, a night to celebrate Wellington and Hayes Corporation, the tech empire she and David had built from the ground up over the past decade. The chandeliers sparkled overhead. Waiters in crisp black uniforms glided between tables, carrying champagne. The smell of roasted prime rib drifted through the air. The place looked like a scene from a magazine. Perfect, polished, expensive. David had insisted they make a big entrance. He kept one arm firmly around Sarah's waist, the other waving at investors, board members, and journalists. He was charming, confident, every inch the golden boy CEO. And Sarah, well, she was the quiet half of the partnership. The one who stayed out of the spotlight but made sure the bills were paid, the right people were hired, and the wrong people were kept at bay. She had supported him through everything. His long nights, his bad decisions, his wild dreams. She had even poured millions from her own family inheritance into the company when no bank would give them a loan. And now, as she stood there under the glittering lights, Sarah thought, we made it. All the sacrifices were worth it. She was wrong. The speeches began after dinner. First, the CFO gave a dry but polite rundown of profits and growth. Then came the head of marketing, Claire Mitchell, who wore a tight red dress and too much perfume. Sarah noticed the way Claire's eyes lingered on David a little too long when she introduced him. But she pushed the thought aside. David stepped up to the microphone, grinning like a man who owned the world. Cameras clicked. He started with the usual, thanking shareholders, praising employees, talking about expansion. Sarah relaxed in her chair, sipping champagne. She had heard this speech 100 times before. And then, he said it. Tonight, David's voice rang out, marks a new chapter in my life. I've made a decision, one that I feel is best for both me and Sarah. Sarah blinked. People in the room leaned forward. Effective immediately, he continued. I am filing for divorce. For a moment, Sarah thought she had misheard him. The room fell into stunned silence. David kept talking, his voice steady, almost cheerful. We've simply grown apart, and it's time I focus on people who truly share my vision for the future of this company. Gasps, whispers. A few awkward laughs from people who thought maybe it was a joke. It wasn't. Sarah's champagne glass trembled in her hand. David? What are you doing? She said under her breath, her voice low but sharp. He glanced at her for half a second, not with love, not even with regret, but with a smugness that twisted her stomach. It's better this way, Sarah, he said quietly, almost like he was reassuring a child. The MC tried to recover the moment, but the damage was done. Phones were already out. Journalists were whispering into their recorders. Investors exchanged looks. Sarah sat frozen, her face burning, her heart pounding in her ears. She forced herself to stand. She had to leave before the tears came. But as she turned, she heard Claire's voice from across the room. Guess this means I'll be working closer with you, David. Laughter followed. Soft, cruel, knowing. Sarah didn't remember leaving the ballroom. She only remembered the cold night air outside and the sound of her heels clicking too fast against the sidewalk. She waved off the driver David had arranged and called her own car. In the back seat, she pulled out her phone and opened the news app. It was already there. CEO announces divorce in surprise gala speech. There was a photo of David at the microphone, smiling. And there she was, standing beside him, caught mid-blink, looking confused and small. She shut the phone off. Her chest felt tight. When she reached the hotel suite, their shared suite, she was greeted by a half-empty closet. David's things were gone. His cologne still hung in the air, mixed with the faint scent of Claire's floral perfume. On the bed was a single envelope with her name on it. Inside, divorce papers. No note. No explanation. Just his signature already scrawled at the bottom. The hours passed in a blur. Sarah sat at the desk staring out at the city lights, her fingers tracing the edge of the papers. When her phone buzzed, she expected another headline alert. But it was a text from her oldest friend, Emma. "Emma, are you okay? I just saw the video. I can't believe he did that to you." Sarah stared at the words for a long time before replying. "Sarah, I'm fine. I'll handle it." But she wasn't fine. She was furious. Around midnight, she got another call, this one from James Carter, her financial advisor. "Sarah, I know it's late, but I think we need to talk." Her voice was flat. "About what?" "About the company," James said. "I've been hearing things from a few board members. Let's just say, not everyone's happy with David's leadership." Sarah frowned. "Go on." James hesitated. "If you wanted, you could take control, quietly, before the merger next week. I know for a fact. There are shareholders who'd sell their shares to you in a heartbeat if the price was right." Sarah's heart started to race. She had spent years quietly buying up small portions of the company through a trust. It wasn't enough to give her control, yet. But with the right moves. She looked at the divorce papers again, the ink still fresh. David's smug grin in the ballroom replayed in her head. "James," she said slowly, "how fast could it be done? If we start first thing in the morning, 24 hours. Sarah's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then we start tomorrow." When she finally lay down in bed, she didn't cry. She didn't beg for answers. She didn't even think about David's betrayal in the way most women would. Instead, she thought about power, and about how, by this time tomorrow, David Hayes would no longer have any. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. Sarah woke up the next morning before sunrise. Her eyes felt heavy, but her mind was sharp. She wasn't thinking about breakfast. She wasn't thinking about whether David had slept well in Claire's arms. She was thinking about control. From her hotel window, the Manhattan skyline was bathed in a pale grey light. The streets below were almost empty, except for delivery trucks and early commuters. Sarah stood there with her coffee, planning. At 6:30 a.m., her phone buzzed. James Carter's name flashed on the screen. "Are you ready?" he asked. "More than ready," Sarah replied. "We have a short window," James said. "There are 3 major shareholders willing to sell today. If we get all 3, you'll have majority control." Sarah asked if David knew anything. James assured her, not a clue. He's probably too busy basking in yesterday's headlines to notice what's about to happen. Sarah smirked. Good, let's make sure he stays blind until it's too late. By 8 a.m., Sarah was in James's office, a sleek, glass-walled space overlooking Park Avenue. James was already pacing with a folder in his hands. "Here's the situation," he began, flipping it open. "Shareholder 1, Leonard Brooks, owns 12%. Old-school investor. He hates David's risk-taking. Shareholder 2, Patricia Green, 8%. Family friend of your late father. She'll sell to you if you ask. Shareholder 3, Victor Castillo, 5%. Frustrated with the way marketing has been run under Claire." Sarah scanned the numbers. "That's 25% total. Add that to the 28% I already hold through the trust, and..." "You're at 53%. James finished, smiling. Faintly, majority control. Enough to not just challenge David, but to remove him entirely. The first meeting was with Leonard Brooks. He was in his late 60s, silver-haired, with the calm confidence of a man who had seen 100 CEOs come and go. They met at his private club over black coffee. Leonard didn't bother with small talk. "I saw what David did last night," he said. "Disgraceful, bad for the company, bad for morale." Sarah's tone was steady. "It was more than disgraceful. It was calculated. And if he's willing to do that to me, imagine what he'll do to our investors when it suits him." Leonard leaned back, studying her. "You're not here to complain. You're here for my shares." "I'm here to save the company," Sarah replied. "If you want stability, sell to me. You know I'm not reckless. You know I'll protect the business we've built." He didn't hesitate long. "Done. I'll have my attorney draft the transfer by noon." The second meeting was even easier. Patricia Green had known Sarah since she was a teenager. They met at Patricia's brownstone, where she served tea in delicate china cups. "I never liked David," Patricia said bluntly, stirring her tea. "Always thought he was too smooth for his own good." "You were right," Sarah replied. "And now I need your help to make things right." Patricia didn't ask for details. She simply nodded. "Send me the papers. I'll sign today." The third meeting, Victor Castillo, was trickier. Victor was young, ambitious, and known for playing both sides when it suited him. He invited Sarah to his midtown office, where a wall of flat-screen monitors displayed stock market tickers. "You're asking me to back you against the man who's been signing my checks for the last 5 years, Victor said, crossing his arms. Sarah didn't flinch. "I'm asking you to back the future of this company. Under David, marketing is a circus. The merger will happen without discipline, without a plan, and you'll lose money. Under me, you'll have stability, and a CEO who doesn't make personal announcements in front of investors." Victor smiled faintly. "You drive a hard bargain." "And I keep my promises," Sarah replied. He signed. By 4 p.m. the deals were sealed. The documents were notarized. James handed Sarah a single folder with the signed transfers. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You now own the majority of Wellington and Hayes." Sarah held the folder like it was a weapon, and, in a way, it was. That night, while David was photographed arm-in-arm with Claire at some charity dinner uptown, Sarah sat in her hotel suite drafting an email to the board. Subject: Special board meeting, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Message: All members are required to attend. Agenda will be distributed in person. She signed it simply, Sarah Wellington. Around midnight, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the balcony. The city glittered below, full of people chasing money, power, and dreams. She had been chasing stability all these years, making herself smaller so David could be larger. Not anymore. She thought about the look on his face when she walked into that boardroom tomorrow. Would it be shock? Anger? Fear? She hoped for all three. But there was something else beneath the satisfaction, a cold, almost dangerous clarity. David had underestimated her for years. So had almost everyone else. They saw her as the wife, the helper, the background character. Tomorrow, she would show them that she was the one writing the script. By the time David Hayes arrived at the Wellington and Hayes headquarters the next morning, the boardroom was already filling up. He strolled in wearing a tailored charcoal suit, his hair slicked back, the easy confidence of a man who thought the world still belonged to him. Claire Mitchell was right behind him, her red heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She carried a slim laptop and an even slimmer smile. They looked like a power couple stepping onto a stage. David greeted the directors with a warm handshake, chuckling with a few of them, making casual comments about the merger presentation. In his mind, this meeting was about cementing his legacy as the man who had pushed the company into its next era. He didn't notice the slight shift in atmosphere, the tightness in the room, the way some of the board members' eyes flicked toward the door every so often. The door opened again, and Sarah Wellington walked in. She was dressed in a deep navy suit that fit her perfectly, her hair pulled back in a clean, low bun. There was no smile on her face, no trace of the humiliation she had endured 2 nights earlier. She carried a single leather folder and a calm that was almost unnerving. David's easy smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before returning. "Sarah?" he said, as if surprised to see her. "Didn't expect you here this morning. This is a strategic meeting, not—" "This is exactly where I should be," Sarah interrupted, her voice cool and even. She took the seat at the head of the table, the one David always used. Her movement was deliberate, unhurried, a small but unmistakable claim of dominance. David gave a short laugh, glancing at Claire. "All right. I guess you're curious about the merger plans. Fine, you can sit in." Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she slid the folder onto the table and opened it. "Before we discuss any merger," she said, "there's something the board needs to be aware of. As of yesterday afternoon, I hold 53% of Wellington and Hayes shares." The words hung in the air like a sudden clap of thunder. 1 or 2 board members visibly shifted in their seats. Claire's lips parted, her confident smile collapsing into confusion. David leaned forward, his voice low but sharp. "What are you talking about?" "I've acquired controlling interest," Sarah said plainly. "From Leonard Brooks, Patricia Green, and Victor Castillo. All transfers were completed yesterday and have been verified by legal counsel. I am now the majority shareholder." David shook his head, his expression twisting between disbelief and anger. "This is absurd. You can't just—" "I can," Sarah said, cutting him off. "And I did." She turned to the other board members. "Effective immediately, I am assuming the role of Chief Executive Officer. This is not a request. It is the decision of the majority shareholder, myself." A stunned silence followed. One of the older directors, a man named Henry Stanton, cleared his throat. "Well, legally, she's within her rights. If she holds majority control, the board is bound to acknowledge her authority." David's voice rose. "Henry, you can't be serious. We have a merger on the table." "We do," Sarah said, looking directly at David. "And I will decide how that merger proceeds. You will have no further involvement in its negotiation or execution." Claire spoke up suddenly, her tone sharp. "You can't just push him out like this. He's the face of the company. Investors trust him." Sarah turned her gaze to Claire. "Investors don't trust scandal, Ms. Mitchell. They don't trust CEOs who make personal announcements during business events. And they certainly don't trust executives who enter into inappropriate relationships with their subordinates." The colour drained from Claire's face. "That's not—" "Save it," Sarah said. "You're dismissed from your position as marketing director, effective immediately. HR will provide you with the details of your severance package." Claire's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. She looked at David, waiting for him to intervene. He said nothing. David leaned back in his chair, glaring at Sarah. "This is a mistake. You don't know what you're doing. Running this company isn't about revenge." "This isn't revenge," Sarah said quietly, her voice steady but edged with steel. "This is leadership, something you forgot the meaning of when you started treating this business like your personal playground." She turned back to the board. "All in favor of my appointment as CEO, raise your hand." One by one, hands went up around the table. No one wanted to be on the wrong side of the majority shareholder. By the time the last hand rose, David's jaw was clenched so tight Sarah could see the muscle twitch in his cheek. "It's unanimous," Henry Stanton said. "Congratulations, Ms. Wellington." Sarah closed her folder. "Meeting adjourned. David, you'll be escorted from the building. Security will ensure you collect your personal belongings from your office." For a long moment, David didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on hers, cold and furious. Finally, he stood, straightened his suit jacket, and walked toward the door without looking back. Claire followed, her heels clicking fast, her head bowed. The room emptied slowly, the board members offering polite congratulations as they left. When the last one was gone, Sarah stood alone in the quiet boardroom. She rested her hand on the polished table, letting the reality sink in. She had walked in as the woman everyone assumed would fade quietly into the background. She was walking out as the one in control of everything David had tried to take from her. And the best part was knowing he never saw it coming. 2 weeks had passed since the boardroom coup, and the air at Wellington and Hayes felt lighter without David's shadow hanging over it. Sarah moved into the corner office he had once claimed as his own. The walls were bare at first, stripped of his oversized portraits and awards, replaced slowly with framed photographs of the early days of the company, the days when it had been about hard work, not ego. Employees who had once kept their heads down around David now stopped by her office with ideas, updates, and even the occasional smile. It felt like the company was breathing again. David, on the other hand, had disappeared from the headlines almost overnight. Claire had left him within days of his ouster, taking a job with a rival firm. The investors who once called him daily now let his number go to voicemail. Rumors trickled in that he was struggling to find a new role. His reputation for public humiliation and personal scandal had spread quickly through the industry. One rainy Tuesday morning, Sarah was in her office reviewing quarterly projections when her assistant poked her head in. "There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. But he says it's urgent." Before Sarah could respond, David stepped into the doorway. His suit looked worn, the sharp tailoring of the past replaced with fabric that hung a little loose. His hair wasn't slicked back. It was slightly damp from the rain. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sarah gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." David lowered himself into the chair slowly, as if the weight of the moment pressed on his shoulders. "Sarah, I came to talk. Just to talk." She folded her hands on the desk. "About what?" He cleared his throat, his eyes darting briefly to the window before returning to hers. "I made a mistake. I let ambition and, arrogance get the better of me. I thought you'd always just be there, holding things together while I went after the big moves. I didn't see how much I was throwing away until it was gone." Sarah leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "You didn't make a mistake, David. You made a choice, more than one choice actually, repeatedly." He winced but pressed on. "I've been talking to people. There's a startup that could use my expertise, but they're hesitant. My reputation isn't great right now. If you could maybe put in a good word, even bring me on here in some capacity. I'd work under you, consult, whatever you need." The request hung in the air. Years ago, she might have said yes without thinking. Years ago, she might have still been the woman who poured herself into keeping him afloat. But that woman was gone. "David," she said slowly, "I'm not in the business of saving people from the consequences of their own actions. You tried to humiliate me in front of the entire industry. You tried to strip me of influence so you could replace me with someone you were sleeping with. And you did it all while assuming I would never fight back. I know," he said quickly, "and I regret it. I regret everything." She shook her head. "No, you regret losing." For a moment, he looked like he might argue. Instead, he just nodded, as if accepting the truth of it. She opened a folder on her desk and slid a single sheet of paper toward him. "This is a severance agreement. It's not generous, but it's enough for you to start over. I suggest you use it wisely." He stared at the paper, his jaw tightening. "So, that's it? After everything we built?" Sarah's eyes were steady. "We didn't build it, David. I built it. You just made sure everyone thought it was yours." Security arrived at her subtle nod. They didn't touch him, but their presence was enough to make the message clear. David stood, tucking the paper into his coat pocket. He hesitated at the door, as if searching for something to say that could change her mind. When he found nothing, he left without another word. The office was quiet again. Outside, the rain still pattered softly against the glass. Sarah returned to her work without looking back. That night, she attended a charity dinner, not in David's shadow this time, but as the keynote speaker. When she took the stage, she spoke not about betrayal, not about revenge, but about resilience. Sometimes, she told the crowd, the greatest strength is not in avoiding the fall, but in standing up after it, and making sure you never have to rely on the person who pushed you down. The applause was warm and long. She smiled, not for the cameras or the headlines, but for herself. David Hayes was now just another chapter in her story, one that ended the moment she decided her worth wasn't defined by the man beside her, but by the woman she chose to be. And the moral was clear. Never underestimate the quiet strength of the person you betray, because one day they might own the very ground you stand on.